What do you think sentience is for an animal then?
Well, it's our subjective opinion as always, since we haven't come into terms with uh, having an explanation to saying that what sentience from at least humans' perspective is. Like
Well,
the
then
best
let's start with human
explanations I've
perspective.
seen over the
What
years
is a
were like,
human
What's
perspective
your
of
what is your
sentience?
I've just said. I mean, I've just said it. I believe like before when I've said it that uh, there are different levels and forms of sentience. That was it for me.
Sure.
That was
I'm
my
asking
whole
about what
entire
is human
defense.
sentience?
Huh?
That's fine. What is human sentience?
wait? I thought it
You
was
said
what
there's a
is
difference
sentient.
between
I
levels.
describe human sentience as a neurological structure that's formed by those cells having the cellular memory in order to act as in order to trigger such mutations, such defense mechanisms, like imagined as a binary code way of like primitive way of like being alive, doing stuff like
Okay. And
trying
how would that
to
be different than animal
make sure
sentience?
you survive.
Okay,
It's
that's
like an
fine. How would
instinct.
that be different than animal sentience?
I'd say it's way much primitive, but
Okay,
still,
we're just like a
it
difference in like
exists.
the level of sentience then, not necessarily a different definition.
Not entirely,
Okay,
but
that's fine. Arco, would
but
you mind
constructed
repeat?
in a very
Oh, sorry.
different way. Just constructed in a different way, formed
Okay,
from
is there like a way
different.
that you can explain the different construction?
I explain it like imagine like this: the cell is like the core principle, like the building block. That's like the manuscript of consciousness, but it's still like attributing those traits of consciousness in its acts, in its defense mechanisms, in its cellular memory, in its within the fact that it's an alive cell and not a dead cell,
Okay,
and you could
so
just
that sounds
apply
like
it.
they're
You
the
could just
same
multiply
between
it
both
to,
animals and humans then.
huh? Well, you could just,
In
like I've
so
said,
it sounds
you
like
could
it's the same
just.
definition at least. It's just different levels.
It's
Is
like,
that accurate?
yeah, like from
Okay.
levels from a basic
I don't mean
standpoint,
to
like
like hang
going
up on the
up,
point.
like going more,
Yeah. Well,
how do
you're
I say
not.
it, like
I'm not trying to
complex.
like get you to like argue against me. I just want to like have your position on what sentience is stated. So, are you comfortable with the definition you put forward and just saying there's different levels, or is that an okay
Yeah, I believe
position?
there are different levels because the humans are like made out
Sure.
of the same thing anyway, with the neurons
Okay.
and stuff. It's just the cell reflecting its instincts, like as what I'm saying, instincts, like I refer to its cellular memory and defense mechanisms,
Okay. That's fine.
it being sentient,
I don't.
So yeah,
I
you
don't
get
want
it.
to be
I see.
the focal point here. I just want to get
Okay,
the
so
definitions clarified.
think like
So what I
the
would like to do
cell's
is move on to what
instincts like
Arco's definition
reflecting
of
over to
sentience
the
is
final
here.
product, which is the human neurological system,
Well,
or any mammals,
I'm trying to take a
or
neutral position
Wait,
here. So
but
what I would like to do is move to
So
Arco's definition. Arco,
yeah, I'd
what is
love
your
to.
definition on sentience?
So I think sentience is the ability to perceive or feel things as a subject, which necessarily requires an awareness of or a consciousness to be able to do so. And I will grant that there
that's the
are different
definition.
levels. I will grant that there are different levels of things that one can experience. For example, I think that what I experience as a human is very different than what, say, a mouse might experience. And that is not to say that I have a greater level of sentience. I think that sentience is binary. You either are aware or you're not. What you are aware of is the thing that changes and has different levels. So, for example, I might have a greater awareness of calculus, but a whale probably doesn't.
Well, SD, I think
Okay,
the question should
so
have been
what I would like to ask then to
how
both
do we
of you
perceive sentience, you
is
know?
one cell sentient, right? If I have like a bacteria in a petri dish, is that bacteria sentient?
I don't think so.
By the way, if that's if they could have a dialectic for a little bit, and then if I could jump in, I have a kind of prodding point for both of them that I'm curious about.
I have no issue with that.
Okay, cool. But yeah, go ahead, guys. You
If
well,
we,
one sec, Sid, 1 sec. They're in the middle of answering that.
Just to answer your question again, Nameless, I don't think that bacteria is.
Okay, thank you. X-Court, do you think a bacteria is sentient?
Of course.
Ah,
In what sense is a bacteria sentient?
Think of it like as opposed to just like him referring to the like definition of what sentience is. Think of it like how do we perceive sentience? Like how does it work from an evolutionary standpoint? Like what's the
Okay.
essence of sentience? You know, like think of it uh like the previous example, levels of sentience. I believe it's a more primitive level of sentience that's still carrying the core essence of like its instincts, you know,
hmm. Can
what
I
I
jump in here with
define
the
by
prodding
cellular
question?
memory. I define instincts by
Once you've done.
the cell's defense mechanism being carried over to a higher level of of existence, like having a spine, for example, having a nervous system, having a neuron, like having neurons and stuff firing at each other. If you're getting the
Okay.
whole picture, I just want to keep it
So
kind of
that
short,
would
like 10
actually
more
cut against
minutes.
that would cut against your earlier point. So,
No, that wouldn't.
for example,
That's what I was
well,
saying.
yeah, but you were saying that there are these properties true of a being that is sentient, that is something like
And those are the
has
properties.
defense, has
No,
some
those
sort
are
of
the
defense, is
properties.
an
Yeah,
organic
those are the properties, so it doesn't cut anything.
matter.
You just got it
Well,
all wrong.
okay, X-Court. Let's be clear, okay?
Don't shush me that, you just got it all wrong.
I'm in the
Those
okay.
are the
So then,
We
defense
don't
me-
we
no,
don't need
just
hostility here.
clarify then.
I mean,
Okay.
I don't think any particular parties at fault here. Let's just try to keep to the points and let the person who's speaking finish the point and then respond. And if you really want to hear like a particular person's opinion, just make clear that like you're asking that person.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I could be totally wrong, so I'll just clarify off the bat. So, what are the properties? I'm gonna ask you a really deliberate question. What are the properties true of something to have sentience? Be really specific. Don't go on a ramble about evolution.
It sells to be alive. But if you're talking
That's
about
vague.
like our perceive of sentience, like the general
Properties
mammal
true of
sentience, like
something.
are you referring to that like higher level of
I'm not
existence?
talking higher or lower. It's like an on and off switch. What turns the on switch for something that
The cell
necessarily is
being
sentient?
alive.
The cell being alive.
It requires the cell to
Are
be
you sure
alive
that's your
and not
final
dead.
answer?
Yes, it requires the cell to be functioning, to be alive.
Okay. If I have electrochemical reactions going on in nerves whereby we process harmful stimuli in, let's say, like here, if we
I've got
satisfy
it.
the criteria of some sort of movement response in organic matter, does that necessarily entail sentience?
No, because you could also think of it like this. You're playing
Oh,
chemistry
so
with
no.
dead
The answer
organic
is no.
material. No,
So the
think of it
answer is
like
no.
organic material is still material. Think of it like this. even if it's dead.
Okay, I'm real
You could
export.
just play chemistry with dead organic material. So it doesn't really refer
I'm
to
not talking about
consciousness.
dead organic material. Okay.
You're talking about like an alive brain that's separate from its host, playing with the neurons with
No.
electrical
No,
signals.
no, no, no.
Then explain yourself.
Okay, what would you okay. So would you
That
classify
wasn't
a dead
related.
human? Can I speak or are
No,
you
I
just
don't
gonna talk?
classify a
You're just
dead
gonna
human to
rant?
be sentient
No,
if
no,
its
like
cells are dead
no,
too.
no. Okay. Let me just can I just speak or are you just gonna cut me off? So if we have alive organic cells, okay, like we process harmful stimuli sufficiently for it to result in some sort of electrochemical reaction. The reactions are stored in the nerves, but it's not processed by a brain, and the resulting movement is a twitch, right? So that um, twitch is not going to be processed by a brain, right? It's right. I wouldn't say that thing is experiencing sentience, right?
Of course,
So
because
it
that's
would
a
still have alive organic cells. So I don't think that your criteria is
like a
sufficient.
recently deceased man.
I don't think your criteria is sufficient to grant that um that would necessarily entail consciousness, right? If you unplug a brain from a human, it's unclear to me that that thing will experience sentience. Though I understand that's unrelated. I, okay, X-Court,
Yeah,
before you
I'm so
laugh.
sorry,
No,
but
no.
I mean,
Shh,
I'm
shh.
trying to just
No,
get my
X-Court,
head around
not.
what you're saying.
Stop.
Like,
Stop. I'm talking. Like,
you're
listen,
contradicting yourself. No, stop
X
it.
X-Court,
just
guy,
talk at
write
one
down your
point.
point
Stop
and don't
changing it.
like your ADHD is just
I can't
fucking
follow you,
going
son.
so okay.
No, I can't
Write
follow what
write
you're
things
saying.
down.
Shut the
Yeah,
fuck
because you're
up.
getting fucking
Just
owned.
go on from one
All
point.
right, hang
Stop
on,
going on
Ryan.
from
Sorry,
one point to
I've got to
another.
step in. Let's just take
For
it
just
one at a time.
Talk
Right?
in one context.
Can I cut in for just a second?
Yeah, I guess so. Why not?
I've said no multiple times.
Is there a mute button that you can use?
There
Because
is. I'm not too keen on muting people, but I mean, I want Xcode to finish his point, and I want the other guy to also respond to it. So.
Yep,
dude,
that's all I
gotta
want.
act big boy. Just let him talk.
Well, I mean, I'm done. Like the whole idea is I've just satisfied all your criteria, and that doesn't necessarily entail sentience. So convince me, persuade me that that necessarily entails sentience. Those criteria necessarily entail sentience. I'm unconvinced.
May I take inherit his answer if I may? I would
As soon
say
as X-Cort's
No,
done,
no.
I'd
I'd
be
like to
happy to
hear
hear
from
what your
X-Court
question.
because
I'd be
he
happy to hear
has.
your
Yeah,
answer.
let's let Xcode reply to that, and then said you can by all means contribute. Of course, always welcome. But
okay. Okay.
afterwards.
So afterwards. Okay.
Afterwards. Thank you. So Xcode, your response.
Well, as soon as he contradicted himself over and over again, he just moved from one point to another. So it was almost impossible for me to get my head around what the fuck he was talking about. That just his views just
Learn to
suddenly
write things
changed over
down.
and over
Learn
again.
to write things down. Stop talking meta. No one gives a fuck about your feelings.
Well, I'm not talking about my feelings. You're perverting my
Okay.
thoughts. I'm talking
Anyways,
about
can
that
you
you can't
Please
yeah,
solve
just
respond
stuff
to
with
the
it.
fucking
points, though.
speak.
I'm
Respond to
talking
my
that
point.
you're coming
Hang-
off of from one point to another. You're contradicting. You
Nobody
are
cares.
contradicting yourself
Okay,
that way.
here,
Can
okay,
we?
You aren't
here.
I want us to stay
satisfied
on topic
with
with
what
the,
you're
the
asked,
discussion, Punk.
and
So
you
please
go from
respond
that
to
to
what Nick
another.
was saying.
No, you've asked it numerous times. You've asked the same shit numerous times because you weren't like you weren't. How do
Punk,
I
will you
say it?
please
Like,
respond to the idea that you can show that there's movement in things inside the living cell?
I've
It's not
said no
necessarily
multiple
entailed
times.
by. Okay. So
So,
then, do you
but wait.
concede the
Oh,
do you
wait, wait.
concede
But
the point
which
then
standpoint
that
you're coming
So,
off of from, though?
are you either
Like,
conceding the
pick
point
one.
or are you just giving a non-answer?
You
So
moved
so
from
it's which one of
one
those two,
standpoint to
or do
another.
you
Now
have
pick
some
one
sort of
and
counter
tell it
position or
again.
Come on,
response?
just one at a time,
Could
guys.
could you just pick one viewpoints rather than going from one to another, and just ask your question one more time within its context, alone, separated.
Yeah, and
Stop
I'm
talking
sorry,
about
I'm
other
not sure
stuff
how
for
to
once.
best pronounce your name. Is it NK is live? Is that how you say your name? I
Yeah,
apologize if I'm butchering it, but
No, you're
y-
fine. That was actually spot on. Yeah.
sure, thank you. So if you wouldn't mind humoring Xcourt by restating your question one more time,
Sure,
if
sure.
go ahead.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure that we're clear. Okay, so the criteria, name me what the properties are that has to be true of something for sentience to be there. What are those properties?
I've said that the cell must be alive, and then you went on to the
Ah,
electrical question.
so the cell just has to be alive.
But in order for us to, let's say, get a response, like a mutation you've asked, right? There are various other factors like uh, a, a long lasting stress to the cell from an environmental standpoint that challenges its code, like genetic code, like its cellular memory, in order to drive it to, like, I consider cellular memory, the genes, the code integrated in it, to be the basis, the building block for instincts. And the cell being alive, like, within its whole, like, I consider instincts to be the basis for sentience in terms of cell. That's the easiest way for me to, like, sum it up for you. Like, just just think it that way. Like, there's a cell, there's this genetic material, like info, like the code stored, and think of that cellular memory as its basis for uh like instincts, and think that the instincts are a basis for basic sentience to be constructed out of within its evolutionary roles. Like, I mean, think of it in that
Okay,
code context.
got it. So I'm
Okay,
trying to understand
finally.
the why that, I guess, pattern um why that pattern would be some condition uh for arising for sentience arising like out of that. um I'd, I'm still curious, like, so at what point would you say something isn't sentient? So based on your current criteria.
You're talking about, like, the organic material, right?
Yeah.
If it's dead, not functioning, and you could say that, for example, in some, like, basic cells, you could maybe, like, get a response from a dead cell and stuff, but it's like, think of it like, not exactly like, how do I say it, like creating a Frankenstein or something, but like toying with its remains. Think of it that way. If you were to, like, do those experiments on a dead body, there's like, think of the dead cell formation, like the organic structure, the blood vessels and stuff being formed out of those dead cells to act as a still, like a if like, think of it like acting as an element, as a
Mhm.
matter, which is, although it being although if it's dead, it's still responding to certain chemicals in some ways. Maybe not from an evolutionary stress response, like an instinct, but more like it performing, not like performing, but it like obeying laws of physics, like pouring salt over like a dead corpse, or pouring acetaldehyde over cancer cells.
Hmm. Okay. Here, let me just take what you've said, and then let's hop back in the ring about this later. Okay. I just want to understand your position fully. I'm glad I have a better perspective.
Yeah,
Arco, I
me
think
too.
you had some things you wanted to
Yeah,
raise. So
thanks, Nick. Sid
yeah,
also
sure.
wanted to say something, so I'm going to give Sid the opportunity to speak if he would like to.
Oh,
Actually, if I can just jump in there, I believe Paddy Politics wanted to say something first. She was first in line, so we can
You broke
take.
up, SD.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think Paddy Politics was first to want to jump in, and then Sid was coming second. So Paddy, are you with us? And did you want to say something?
Oh no, I already said what I wanted to say. I thought people cutting each other off was childish. So
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah, no
already said
problem.
what I wanted.
That's fine. You said your the thing that you wanted to say. So, Sid, I guess you can go ahead.
yeah. What I wanted to say was an answer to uh, what's his name, NK's live. When you gave the proposition about dead person's cells being, moved and all, uh, I think that a person, a human being, it's when I said that sentience is on different levels, what I meant was different things perceive things differently. A dead human is dead, no longer sentient, but the cells that constitute a human are um, sentient in their own way. So basically, until they individually are alive, those cells are sentient, not as much as a human, but on a cellular level, they are sentient because it takes a long time for our cellular structure to break down. So, in that scenario, the human would be dead, but the cells would be alive. That is what I wanted to, and that's why I wanted to, inherit his position and carry on the discussion.
I see, Sid.
Thank you. That
I'm
was
still
beautiful.
I think the question still applies though. How do you know that that cell has sentience? Because
Okay.
it's sort of assumed that cells have sentience, but you haven't told us, and neither has Punk told us how a cell is sentient. You just say that because it's alive, because it's organic, because it has instincts and it reacts to its environment, therefore it has an awareness of being alive. But I don't think that that is sufficient.
Okay. If I may inherit his position and take on the discussion, uh,
Um,
may I, quote?
um,
I'll take that as a yes. Anyways,
of course.
uh, a minimum requirement which I suppose for sentience is, at least what Google says, is that it must perceive and it must feel and
Right.
to, and to check.
And also to be aware, it has to be a subject that is
No,
aware
feeling
it is
is
perceived.
awareness. Feeling is a second form of awareness. We can't feel anything if you're not aware of anything. So it must perceive and it must feel. So if those two conditions are met, according to that definition, that thing is sentient, at least to the most minimum level. There are more
Okay,
maximum levels of it,
so
but the minimum level is perceiving and feeling.
may I
Now we
stop
have
you
to
there
test those.
because
Yes, yes.
I have a counter to the idea of perception. For example, my phone can perceive my face. It can recognize my face, and then it can turn on my phone so that when I pick it up, it'll unlock the screen, and I can use any apps I want because the phone perceives my face and only my face as the thing to unlock it. So why is that not sentient?
Okay. This logic actually applies to organic matter. inorganic materials are.
Okay, so it's not just perception, but it's also an organic thing that perceives.
No, we are talking about, in the lines of organic matters, because it is a given, at least in the scientific
I
advancements
I
of
don't I
yet.
don't mean to like be a stickler about this, but the definition you just said didn't mention organic. What organic matter?
Yes, because it was presumed, because consciousness or sentience is something that we link with things that are alive, and the things that we perceive to be alive are organic. So it was a
So
presumption.
this is
could I
the
explain
main
it?
point of my criticism or my skepticism here. I don't understand how a cell that is alive therefore is aware. That's the thing I don't
Yes,
understand, and I want you to tell
exactly,
me how. I'm not convinced.
exactly. Now we presume that the things must be alive, and then we said to be sentient, they must fulfill two things: perception and feeling. If a cell can pass these two tests, and we have to make tests for perception and feelings, if they do pass that, they're sentient. How do we test perception? For example, how NK's life said, put a electrical shock to the dead person, the meat will react. Those cells are perceiving something.
But how does
Now,
that indicate feelings, though? You said
exactly.
feelings and
Well,
perception, right?
can I continue from
Exactly.
there, Sid, in
Yes,
regards to
please.
what you're saying? Thank you.
If
Because
I may
we're
just.
we're kind of on the same idea, so I'm not going to butcher it, don't worry.
Okay.
So, I think what we're trying to say here is that since the cell, like, at least what he was trying to say is like, think of the machinery, like, imagine cell as a basic machinery, like NK's example, like an iPhone's perception,
Not
and
me.
apply the context of it being made out of organic material and its structure being based off of uh, such way of being like such way of creating a basis for instincts that also does move accordingly on its own. But then the question comes down to, are cells like robots, then that's a whole different question. But
Not
when it also
exactly. Not
comes,
exactly. You see,
well, actually,
there's a whole list of things that must be completed for anything to be considered alive. Those lists include reproduction, consumption of energy, perceptions, feelings, um, defense mechanisms.
of
This
course,
is a huge list of things that must be fulfilled for an organic material to be considered alive, because carbon is basically organic. So
of
Yeah,
course,
I
I'm
guess
thinking the same thing, but like,
it seems to
like,
me like you guys are saying that alive equals sentient, but I don't understand how that's the case. And Punk, I do agree that sentience is reliant on organic things and it's reliant on structures that are organic. For example, I am sentient because I have a brain which is made out of organic material, but it is not clear to me that a neuron inside my brain is sentient of itself.
okay,
I guess I'm still kind of confused on some things too, if I could jump in at some
I've
point.
said so that
Yeah, go ahead,
I
Nick.
personally,
NK's turn. NK, please complete your line.
Um so here, I'm going to reword this ever so slightly. Okay, the earlier point I made. If we have an electrochemical response, it would necessarily entail that there are some living organic cells that caused a twitch. Yes or no?
uh, both yes and no. Yes,
Oh,
because of the reason that you've come up to, and no, because that could well be that that could, the same could also happen with dead cells actually, if they're in a self, like if they're still in their cell formation state, like
Not
information of a
really.
blood vessel, a
Right, but you
neuron,
would just be talking
and
about two different situations.
and
The
they
Yeah,
would
one
that
where
still
there's dead
have,
cells and the one where there's living cells.
well,
Right. So if we
they
just
Explore.
wouldn't,
process,
If I
we
may,
couldn't test their perception in such regards, with
Xcode,
such
I want to correct you.
limited
No,
context
Xcode,
in
no,
their actions towards such chemicals and
no. Xcode,
electrical shock, for example.
yeah,
Xcode,
Um,
if I may interject,
of
dead
course.
cells don't react.
well,
That when a cell is dead, it doesn't react.
yeah.
So yeah, our position still stands. But I would
Yeah, I
like
meant
to,
like chemicals
I
and
would like
stuff,
to,
not
I
like
would like to, no,
a
even
response.
with chemicals, when the cell is dead, it doesn't move. But I would like, because I'm not so much educated in biology, so I don't know if neurons can reproduce, because that is a very important thing for a thing to be alive.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at is if the movement happens, does this necessarily entail sentience in a human?
No, no,
Or at
no.
which point or at which point would a human become non-sentient? Um there's so many there's still like there are things that I'm wanting to understand with that.
Okay,
Well,
for that actually, when we have to take two different takes on that. One is a moral take, and the other is a scientific take. So, if we're taking the scientific take, a person in coma is not a sentient because it doesn't, at least not on the human level,
but its
because
cells are right.
its cells are. Now we have to take it on a moral stance, and I had a
But why are
discussion.
the cells sentient?
Yes,
That's
okay,
the whole question I'm trying to get at this entire
exactly.
debate. Like
Yeah,
I don't have a reason to believe the cells are sentient.
okay. I will try to carry it
Because
on
they're still
from there.
functioning, they're
No,
alive.
quote. Let me explain to you. The thing is, um, I don't know about neurons, so I will be talking in the perspective of muscular cells. Okay, so it
Okay,
is
I'm
from that.
fine to move to muscular cells rather than neuron.
Okay,
Sure.
so muscular cells have the ability to reproduce. They have a reaction on their own. They consume energy and so forth. When a person dies, the muscular cells can be harvested and put into somebody else, and they will still function as a living cell. So that's why. Now we're talking about sentience. A cell's sentience is nothing equal to a human sentience, and we cannot compare them. But judging by the previous definition, the perception and the feelings, they can be sentient. The reason being, we can test that they have perception if we give a reaction to them. And then, and we do get a reaction from them from different uh, chemicals or different touches or, you know, environmental changes. They can perceive it and we get a reaction from them. Now we have to take it on feeling. If there exists a defensive mechanism, and that is where feelings come in, and that's why the word defensive mechanism came in, because there can be other tests, but the only test that I can, on the top of my head take out is defensive mechanisms, because feelings include wanting to live. If a thing wants to live, when it comes to harm's way, it takes up a defensive stance. Now, these cells do have a defensive stance in case of harming environmental changes. That's why we can say that they have not as much as the humans, but a certain level of feeling, because they, like any other living thing, do not wish to die. And that's why I can say that the cells
Hmm.
have a sentience of their own level, not as much as the level of a human being. No, not even close, not by a million miles, but a certain sense of sentience. If we take it in a binary condition, then yes, the cells are sentient because they can perceive and they have a defensive mechanism which entails that they have feelings which include not wanting to die. So that's my position.
How can you know that they have feelings that they don't want to die?
That's the defensive
You're
mechanism
asserting it, but
point.
you're not telling me how you know it.
No, that's the test. That's the
What's
test that
what
I.
what's the test that it can
That's
react to it?
no, no, no. The reactions. There are different kinds of reactions by cells in different situations. I said the test
Hmm.
for feelings is the defensive mechanism because not wishing to die can be included in feelings, which is common in all living things. No living thing wishes to die, and for that, the living things have a
The
defensive
the
mechanism.
thing I have a
Of
problem with
course.
is you're saying no living thing has a wish to die. But my issue is that you're assuming the living thing can even wish. I don't see
Well,
how we can know a living thing has the ability to wish, to desire. You're not telling me how. You just keep saying they can because they're alive. They can because they're alive. And you change the analogy over and over and over again, but it's always the same thing. They can because they're alive. But
can I
why?
hop in there then
Why is that
to
the
answer your
case?
point?
Carry on.
Well, think of it like the bacteria searching for fuel. It wishes for fuel. Think of it like your muscle cells that Sid was talking about. It doesn't even have to be donated to someone's body. Even when the last remaining alive muscle cells on a dead person's body still are able to detect and in some ways search for fuel in order to obtain it into the mitochondria of the cell to keep do its job and uh, not wither away. And the bacteria does wish in that regards.
And I would like to carry on by saying that, Arco, you think of wishing, when I say the word wish, you perceive the wishes on the level of a human. And
Hmm.
I previously said that the human's level of sentience is far, far more complex and far ahead that of a cell.
Yeah,
Even
I
most
recognize
animals.
that you are saying that, but I'm saying that you're anthropomorphizing by saying the cell can wish. That's what I'm accusing you of what you're accusing me of doing. You're
The
saying
hu-
that the cell has the ability to wish. I'm saying the cell does not. I am in fact saying I don't think that it can have the same type of sentience a human can. And I'm asking you what you mean by wish and why you know it can wish in the way of a cell.
Well, now you accept different types of sentience, though,
No, I'm
because
not
we
accepting
never
different types of
said it's the
sentience.
same type of sentience as
I
a
think
human's.
sentience is
We've
binary. You
said it's the
either have it or
basis for
don't.
it.
What you're aware of changes.
Imagine it like a smaller sentience. That's the basis for the much broader, complex sentience to occur.
Okay, yeah, I would like to carry on by that. Uh, the base, if we have to, single out every aspect of human sentience, even the word wish, the human wish consists of many tiny fragments, uh, which
Hmm.
compile to give the human sentience level of the word wish. If we break it down, there will come a point or a section where not where if something harmful happens, you take a stance to make that thing not happen. Whether it is viable or not, that depends on your level of comprehension, but that's another debate. If you take an action that is supposed to be a defensive mechanism, that means that that particular thing does not want that particular thing to happen. And that can be, as a form of test, be perceived as a feeling or a fragment of a feeling. Now, the human level of feelings is very complex. But if we dwindle it down to a cellular level, if something harmful happens and the cell reacts in a way that could um, put a barrier in that thing happening to the cell, that can be perceived as a feeling of not withering away. And that's why I perceive those cells to be sentient, not on the level of humans, but on the level of cells.
Right. So I understand you're saying it's not on the level of humans, and I'm not claiming that it has to be on the level of humans for it to have sentience. My point is that you're saying you're basing the ability to have sentience on behavior. But I've pointed out that there are other things that have behavior that can respond in the ways that you're describing that are not made of organic material. And then you say, because it's organic, therefore it's sentient. So, what is the mechanism that allows for that sentience to occur? That's my question.
He said defense behaviors, for example, the defense mechanism.
Behaviors
Different types
describes
of behaviors.
behaviors describe why we can say something is alive, but you're not telling me how that thing is
It
able to
wasn't
have
chemical
sentience.
behaviors.
Okay.
It wasn't
So
just
chemical
behaviors.
responses are
Art-
is equal to. Is that what you're
No,
saying?
no.
No, no.
That's
Okay,
what
so
you
that's
were
my question.
saying.
What
That's
is
what
the
came.
mechanism?
That's what come out as if you were saying, though.
I'm
You just
asking
wanted
for
to
the
clarify
mechanism
that
that allows
isn't.
for sentience to arise.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, but can I cut in real quick? Just real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that I'm not sure what the heck is going on, but I think um, there may be some like misunderstanding between what um, Lettuce Warrior is saying and what you and Sid are saying. He's not. I'm not sure how to put this. When you guys talk about sentience, I actually agree with Lettuce Warrior about this because there is no evidence that bacteria or cells or anything like that are living. I don't know any scientist or any scientist consensus that cells are living things.
Wait, what the fuck?
What you mean sentient?
Wait, what the fuck? Are you? I'm so
I
sorry.
think she's
I'm
good.
just going to have to leave it at this place. Are you retarded? It's called living cell. It's called
Court.
living
X
organism.
X court.
Be
It's called
Stop, like,
organelle.
stop
Please
being
be
evasive,
charitable.
Are you?
dude.
Charitable.
I'm
Punk,
sorry.
please
I
be
have to
charitable.
cut
Yeah, let's
this.
be
I think
It's too retarded for my taste.
Okay.
If I,
okay.
no, if I
Sorry,
may
but
interject,
my
no,
question
Patty,
is,
please.
are you guys not saying that
I'm
a
so
cell is living?
sorry.
Patty
Okay.
Patty was saying? Patty was saying? Damn,
Okay.
wow,
The
she
thing is,
he is crazy.
if I may say first,
I'd
because
like
No,
of
no, no.
Patty to finish
I,
her point, please. I want
finish.
Patty to be able to finish
I
her point.
really want to do before that.
I
The
don't
thing is
care.
that
No, Sid, you had a chance to talk. Let Patty speak, and then you can speak.
So Lettuce Warrior isn't. He's not like he's not trying to irritate you guys because I think that he actually does not understand what you guys are saying. There is no such thing as like a cell in your body being living and a cell doing things like eating, like say a white blood cell. A white blood cell doing something like eating a bacteria does not mean that it's living. It's just doing its job that it was programmed to do. That's not a I mean, that's not like it's not a sign that it's living and has experiences and sentience. So that's all I'm saying. Lettuce Warrior I think is right here, and I really do not understand what you and Sid are trying to say. Now you can call me retarded if you want, but I know a scientist will agree with me.
no, okay. The thing that I wanted to say first of all was an X quote is not here anymore, so I cannot even say that to him. X quote, but I'm just putting it for the record. X quote, you're a fucking cunt. Why the fuck would you try to do that with my friend Patty over here? He was
Aw.
very civil with you, and this is how you react. Go fuck yourself.
Thank
I
you.
hope
shut your
this is
bitch
being
ass
Yo,
up.
he
yeah,
wasn't he wasn't there.
I know, but I
Oh,
just wanted to put it on the
no
record.
label.
I just
So
wanted to put it on the record. Secondly, Patty, the scientific consensus is that the cells are a living thing. Even
Okay,
plants are.
you're gonna have. Well, okay, no, I agree that plants are living, functioning
No,
organisms,
cells.
but
The cells.
plants. You're talking about the plant cells? Okay, then I don't agree. Plant
No,
cells are not living. Plants
no,
themselves are.
no. It's a scientific consensus. It's
Okay,
already established.
you're gonna have to link that to me because I don't know of any scientist who would say
Uh,
that.
yeah, neither
I
do I. I'm open to it.
okay. You know what? I will just Google and just copy paste the first link
Please do. Nope.
down.
What are
Wait,
your
you guys don't
what?
think plants are living?
No, no, no. We're talking about
No,
cells.
they don't think cells are living.
Okay, so
Well,
the
it
first
depends
thing,
what you mean by cells, but
you know, the
Wait,
human
I'm
cells,
curious.
muscular cells, these things. Okay, so
Yeah,
I
I think we're specifically talking about the sentience of.
no. It has turned to living things. Uh,
Well, see that, I mean, that's the problem. If you're talking about sentience, there's still no evidence that like plant cells or animal cells, regardless of which one you're talking about, are sentient things, or that they're even like. I mean, I can't remember. Oh, bacteria is living, but a virus is not. Like that. That's how I understand it.
no, the thing is, the virus is actually a controversial topic, and scientists cannot, um, put their foot on it. But bacteria and any other cellular thing, an organic cellular thing, it is already a consensus. And I posted a link that defines what is life, and we can read that to certify that cells are indeed living things. Now the discussion can come back to whether they are sentient or not. So, one part that is necessary for something to be sentient, the perception, that has already been established. Is that correct, Harko?
That you have to be able to perceive to be sentient. Is that what
Yes,
I'm agreeing to?
yes,
Yeah, you have to have the ability to perceive to be sentient.
exactly.
Wait,
Now,
that's not necessarily true.
Oh, really? Okay. What's the
Yeah,
argument
why
for
would you have to be able to perceive if you
Because the
remove?
definition of sentience is the ability to perceive or experience something as a subject. It's entailed by the definition.
okay,
I think
so
Sid is
Harko,
referring to perceive external stimuli, right?
So Sid is Sid. That's what Sid is saying. I'm saying that's not what sentience is. Just because it can respond doesn't mean that it is aware that it's responding or aware that it is a living
No, but
thing.
let's say that you took a human and removed all of their senses. They would still be sentient.
Right, because they could experience the fact that their defenses had been removed.
No, but simply, I mean, if you remove all my senses, my thoughts are still there. I still am thinking.
You're
I still am
perceiving thoughts.
self-aware.
You're experiencing something. You're still perceiving thoughts.
Yeah, like pain, like for instance, pain does not necessarily entail sentience. Like they're not equivalent.
Okay, so Sid was not
You,
talking about external stimuli in terms of perceive.
yeah.
wait,
Okay.
hold on a minute. Sentience says
Now
perceive or
recording.
feel things.
What was that, Ben?
Sentience says perceive or feel things.
okay,
Right, but
so
we're just talking about the empirics, right?
no, I think that
So we're
right
Okay.
now, guys, I think that right now the discussion has moved.
I don't think it has to be about that one though.
I think the discussion has moved to the contesting between inorganic or organic material, because if we dwindle down the existence of sentience to perception, then we have to differentiate how the organic materials perceive and how the inorganic materials perceive. And if we can differentiate between that, we will be able to establish what is sentience and what is not. Would
Okay.
everyone agree to that?
Okay, real quick, I just wanted to apologize. Cells apparently are living, but they are not sentient. So I just wanted to apologize for being wrong on that.
you didn't even say that they were like not living. At least I don't remember you saying that.
I think I
Uh,
think
Yes,
I
she
might
I
have
did.
think you
said
said viruses. I think you said viruses.
Nah, she said cells weren't living. I was listening.
Okay.
I think it slipped out of my
Patty,
mouth. I just wanted to
Patty,
apologize real quick.
She also said all the
it's all
scientists
good.
know
I don't
wouldn't
think
agree with
I
them
don't think
being
you need
alive.
to apologize. I think it's nice
yeah,
that you are, but I think it's just it's really cool that you're like, hey, I was wrong on this, and but I also don't think it changes your position because
It's basic
something can be
biology.
living but not
That
sentient.
shit in middle school.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I agree.
okay, so guys, I think right now the discussion can go to two different ways. Either we discuss what can be defined as sentience, or the other ways we can differentiate, and we are taking that perception equals sentience, uh, any level of it, even at least the minimalistic level of sentience. Then
Well,
we have
I'm not necessarily saying so. Just because something can respond, I do not agree that the thing that is responding is necessarily perceiving that it is responding or perceiving the stimulus.
Yo,
so
but why do you guys actually care about the moral argument so much when the diet itself, nutritionally, just turns you
Oh
into
my
better?
god, this
We're
guy,
not
is just
even into
That's
so.
that.
that's what matters.
Hey,
Like,
hey,
who
no
gives a
label.
fuck
Oh my
about
god.
morals
Yeah.
I
when
agree
you
with
See,
see
that.
your
no,
That just happens
no
to be the
label
current topic.
is like a bullshitter. Like this guy needs to just fuck off. Like he's just
I'm,
adding
I'm
nothing
a
good to the
bullshit.
conversation. Yeah, you're adding
No,
nothing good to
I'm
the
making a
I think
point
the
conversation.
here.
label
Who
is
gives a
legitimate.
Yeah,
fuck
you're making a
about
point
morals?
that's orthogonal
What?
to the conversation, sir. So you can shut the fuck up.
I
All right, that was
second that
rude.
motion.
Okay.
All I'm
Yeah,
saying
just
is,
no
who
one
cares
cares.
Yeah.
about the moral
No
or
one
ethical
can someone
aspect
mute this
when it
guy? He's being
deteriorates your
evasive.
health?
It's not
Yo,
part of
Hey,
the
no label.
discussion right now.
can
It's
Mac,
not part of
Ahmad
the
mute this
debate.
guy?
Mac, no label. Currently, the topic is on sentience. Not necessarily like we're still pretty upstream of moral arguments. We're just on sentience of, well, criteria of sentience on particular, you know, beings or like parts of beings. We're not on diet on this particular point for right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm saying the whole moral or ethical aspect of it, it really
We're
doesn't
talking
matter
about
if it turns
scientific things,
degenerate.
you fucking bastard. We're
Yeah, it's
talking
not.
about
That maybe,
Oh my
science.
It's not
god, dude, we're
related right
Okay,
now.
talking
guys.
Like,
about the fucking
right?
empirics,
It's
okay?
Okay,
We're
it's not
guys.
talking
it's not
about
particularly
properties
relevant
true
to
of
the
something for
conversation here.
sentience to arise in something, okay? That's the conversation we're
Yeah,
having.
it's all redundant.
Health
Okay,
would
guys.
even be a red herring as well. So shut the fuck up, dude. You're adding nothing
Okay,
good to the
guys.
conversation.
You
You could
sound
have
like a
talked
whiny
about
bitch.
the
So sentience is able to perceive or feel things. How is it that bacteria are not sentient?
no, we are not agreed to that point yet. So the way this discussion can go, at least what I think, if someone can give a better opinion, I would be really happy. But what I think with there are two ways this discussion can go. One is either we redefine sentience, or if we can differentiate between the perception of organic things, and by organic I mean living things, and the perception of inorganic things, by which I mean non-living things, we can come to a conclusion if we take these two paths. What do you say, Arko?
well, I'm more interested in the difference between the organic and inorganic, because it seems to me like you're saying that the cell can react to things in its environment because it's made of organic material. It therefore has the ability to have an awareness that it is
Oh
doing
yeah.
so. And so
Okay.
that's the thing that I don't necessarily agree to, and I want to know why that's the case.
Okay. This was a path that I really did not want to take because I'm not an expert in biology. Now, first of all, I want to know, is anybody here a medical student? Nobody. So we're kind of on our own. Okay. So
Yeah.
we will have to get deeper into the medical things and use the things that we already know to
Yeah, I mean, we could
understand.
also go top down rather than bottom up. So we could start with larger animals, like humans, for example, and we can
No,
talk about
that would
maybe
no,
how
that would be
humans
the
have
other side.
sentience, and then we can
No,
go back.
that would be the other side of this discussion. We're talking about inorganic and
Hmm.
organic. So if we're doing that, we will have to go from bottoms up.
Okay.
Otherwise, the other discussion is from tops down. Anyways, so
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry, I misunderstood your original question. So Sid, I'm fine to go either direction, whatever you prefer.
no, I don't prefer anything because it's 3:30. Anyways, so the thing that we can say about that is uh, we have to differentiate between living and non-living perception. Okay, so the living perception, the reaction to that can change, and how it can change, that's evolution. You see, a particular cell can have, or a group of at least, because evolution works in groups. So a group of cells is it encounters something in its environment and it gives a reaction. But those reactions are not always the same. But on the other hand, If there is an inorganic material and it experiences something such as, your mobiles facing your face, they will always have the same reaction. On the other side of the field, in the organic side, a number of cells will not with a huge margin, but there will be a little bit of differentiation between the reactions, and the survival of the fittest will kick in. And slowly but surely, the reactions will change, which will be a learning process for them. That's not the same for inorganic
Okay,
materials.
so you're saying that the organic material can change their reaction when in different environments or stimulus.
Yes, and that's how we can differentiate between the living perception and the non-living perception.
So my first question is, can you provide an example of that?
Okay, so suppose there is a bunch of cells and we give them an electric shock which harms them. Some cells have in their in their DNA or something, uh, have the ability to react quickly, react with a certain action, and some have other reactions to that. If a million years pass down and a billion trillion reactions such as that continue and they keep on reproducing, and all of those reproductions, you know, um, have experienced those things, there will be a number of cells that will be resistant to electrical shocks, and that is a change in the reaction of that particular living cell. On the other hand, the inorganic reaction will always be the same.
So you're describing the process
That's not
behind
true.
natural selection, a mutation, and because that mutation happens, the cell is able to survive, and because those cells that survive are able to propagate, they pass on their genes, and then those cells become the dominant genes in that environment, and then we see a change from the cells in the past to the cells in the present. But that doesn't tell me that the cell changed its behavior while it was alive. It talks about the lineage and the gene transfer, but I'm curious if you have an example of a bacteria that changed its behavior without evolution, but just in its life, it adapted.
Now, you see, when we come to the cellular level, the
Mm-hmm.
changes only happen after reproduction or during it. For that to happen, we need to take an example of a more complex organism, but we're talking about
Okay,
a
I
more single
I just want to
organism.
say I don't think that the fact that something changes over time is evidence of sentience. For example, mountains erode over time, they change over time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the
No,
mountain is aware that it's
no,
changing
no,
over
no.
time.
The mountains are not reacting. They are just being affected. There's a difference between affecting or being affected and reacting. The mountains do not react. They just, they are caused upon. There is nothing that they can change about it. There's nothing that they would react to in different conditions, or they will just be acted upon.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, a cell, it will react. It will change its properties. It will do something different than
So
what it is doing.
I'm asking for an example of a cell changing its properties in its lifetime, not over a long line of passing on its genes, but just in its lifetime. Do you have an example of that?
Okay, we will take the cells of our muscles. When our cells need have in their vicinity, they have those, I don't know what bloods provide to the cells. I'm not a medical student, but when those cells have whatever they use for fuel near them, they absorb it.
Glycogen.
Yeah, whatever that is. I'm not a medical student. They absorb that. Meanwhile, when there is something that is not what their fuel is, they do not absorb it. And when there is